There's plenty of room if someone wanted to do some naughty stuff. And where this story starts is my wife found a black Lululemon headband in our bathroom. And my wife does not own a black Lululemon headband. Whose effing headband is this? How dare you accuse me of it? I've been working as a marriage and couples counselor for well over 13 years. I've saved 3,000 plus at last count relationships from impending doom, be they marriages or just long-term relationships. I'm also married myself for nearly 15 years now, 4 beautiful kids, kind of happiest thing, best thing in my life is my marriage, second to nothing in my life. And I want to share with you a really important lesson I've learned that I see a lot of people struggle with. Let me take you back to a moment in time with my wife. So very rare that we kind of aren't together. We're one of those couples that are together all the time, and we kind of know where each other is a lot, but we do have separate jobs, right? So I have my own clients and patients, and she is a therapist. She's a psychologist, and she goes to work and kind of has her own therapist. Sometimes we work from home. Sometimes we work in our offices. And so there's plenty of room if someone wanted to do some naughty stuff that they could, because there's a lot of independence. It's not like we have to clock in or clock out. And where this story starts is my wife found a black Lululemon headband in our bathroom. And my wife does not own a black Lululemon headband. And it's not something my mom or a housekeeper would wear. It was, it was a bit high end. It was a bit of like a style that someone young, like a woman would wear. And so she got really threatened by it and said, "Whose is this?" And I said, "I don't know." And at that point, it was one of the few times in my relationship where I saw my wife get very nervous, very suspicious, and very accusatory. And she said, "Whose effing headband is this?" Now, what the normal response is usually one of two directions. Either you have a tendency to defend yourself and you get, you're feeling criticized and attacked, and you will hammer in like, "What do you mean? You know where I am. Check my phone," and all that. And that can really get into this attack, defend kind of, horrible argument, where you even might say things like, "How dare you? How dare you accuse me of blah, 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 blah," right? And that's a bad place to go, because that's just going to escalate, boom, like a rocket ship. And it's just not a good tactic. And then the other tendency is to shut down, to freeze, to just go cold and quiet. And neither of those are great, right? If we think of it from a clinical standpoint, we would call that the two different ways of reacting when you're outside of your window of tolerance. So when you're faced with something difficult to handle, everybody has a certain amount of stress that they can absorb. We call that the window of tolerance, right? And when you're above the window of tolerance, you are hyper aroused. You'll get defensive and loud, and you'll fight, right? Think of it as your fight or flight, right? And so you'll attack, you'll defend or counter attack, and that's the volcano, right? So if you look this up on Google, you'll see a picture of a volcano kind of talking about someone who's hyper aroused. Then on the opposite side, there's a turtle. There's the hypo aroused. There's the person who goes quiet, and that is the equivalent of running away. But because physically you can't run away, although some people do, they say, "I can't deal with this," and they drive off in their car. But even if you stand there and just go quiet, you're freezing. That's emotionally running away from the confrontation. And so what are you supposed to do? Because neither of those two, either hyper or hypoarousal, are really appropriate. Both of those are a cry for, "I can't take this anymore." And I almost lost it. I almost got defensive with my wife. And I almost said, "How dare you? I'm the most loyal husband. I'm a proud father. I love you more than anything. How could you even think to accuse me?" But instead, what I've learned, and it took all of my practice with my patients and all of the things that I've learned in my own relationship to realize my wife is in pain. And instead of focusing on what she's asking me, Let me think of what she needs. And so I said, what are you trying to say, honey? And in a very calm tone. Remember, communication is 90% nonverbal. She said, is this another woman's? And I said, well, of course not. But oh my God, this must be horrible. Like there's this headband. You don't know whose it is. I don't know whose it is. Let's find out together. Right. Because this is kind of crazy. Obviously I'm not cheating on you. I love you more than life itself. But, clearly you're disturbed by it. And so am I. And I don't know whose headband that is. Let's figure this out. And she was still a little mad because she's a little suspicious. But the tone, the confidence, and this idea that we're a team and me acknowledging how horrible that must feel really helped. The other thing I did is I said, I can only imagine if I found, another man's sock or a pair of underwear or something by your bed, I would be completely crazed out. I would lose my mind. I was like, I can't believe I can only imagine what you're going through, and I want to help you through this. This is, it's clearly not me, and I want to help. Right. And so by me putting myself in her shoes and saying, I can only imagine how horrible this is, I'm acknowledging, I'm validating these horrible, unsettling feelings she has. And that kind of confidence to put myself there is incredibly comforting to my partner, to my wife, right? So you want to realize that if you have a feeling that you need to defend yourself, or if you feel yourself shutting down, that's you getting hyper or hypo aroused, and it's not going to help the situation. You're either becoming that volcano or you're shrinking away like a turtle. And in either case, that fight or flight response, what does it send to your partner, to your wife that's listening, or your husband? It sends to them a message that there's something scary that you're running away from or fighting. In other words, you see this action as a threat, and it's going to feed into their thinking that you really are guilty of whatever it is. But if you're able to calmly stand there and say, no, there's nothing wrong, and let me help you, that sends a signal that, wait a second, maybe the fire alarm going off in my head is inappropriate. Now, if you want to know the end of the story, it turns out there was a babysitter we had who lived next door, a couple doors down, and she was a teenager, and it was from weeks before, but it got piled up under the towels and that was the only person in our house who was even within the normal age range of someone who would own a Lululemon headband. And I said, well, why don't you just text her and ask her if it's hers? And within 10 minutes, she says, oh my God, I've been looking for that. Problem solved, right? But if I said, I don't know whose that is, and that's ridiculous and all that stuff, we could have been fighting for days and weeks, and maybe because her suspicion would be justified in her mind, and because I was so ratcheted up that I didn't know where it's coming from, we wouldn't have been able to think clearly and say, well, hold on, who was in the house? Because that takes a lot of calm. And we might not have ever figured it out, or we might have figured it out after it's too late and I slept out of the house because she kicked me out, or I slept on the couch, or whatever it is. And so learning to stay calm and learning to ask yourself, okay, I'm being accused of something, but I know I didn't do anything wrong. Or even if I did do something wrong, I'm going to own up to doing something wrong and accept the punishment or the discipline or the yelling because, hey, I did something wrong. And I'm going to say, you know what, you're right. You have every right to yell at me and scream, I did something wrong and I need to fix it. And if you need to get your emotions out because I did something bad, that's okay. Because usually when someone's mad and they want to yell and scream at you, it's only because they feel unheard. And if you suddenly invite it, there's no need to scream. If someone says to you, hey, I screwed up, if you want to yell at me, I understand, and you're totally within your rights to, they might scream a little bit, but they'll be like, well, I don't need to. They clearly get that they messed up. Let's talk about the solution. You'll see this a lot, especially in infidelity and betrayal. Someone will say, I don't know how to handle this, right? I don't know why they're screaming at me and they have all these questions. The reason they have all these questions and the reason they're screaming at you is because they're afraid it's going to happen again. But if you say, hey, I messed up, and you're allowed to be mad for as long as you want, but we need to fix this relationship. I need to fix this relationship. I'd like to tell you why this happened. And maybe we can get to a place where both of us feel like our relationship is indestructible because we're both getting exactly what we want out of it. It's 100% my fault, right? You know, this is a choice I made. I'm not assigning blame to anybody but myself, but let's talk about what we can do. And if you want to be mad and angry for a while, I accept that. You let me know when you're ready to talk. It's very hard to get angry with someone who's that compassionate, that logical, and that patient. And again, it's a staying away from the freeze or from the defend and counterattack model. It's going straight to, I understand you're in pain. Your pain is real. Let's talk about your pain first. Whether or not you're guilty of whatever they are mad about is kind of insignificant at this point. The first step is acknowledging, validating, I see that you're hurting. Let's make sure that you know I see your pain and I don't want that. And so if you have that mentality first, deal with the pain first, validate the pain first, deal with how to solve it second, you're going to be in much better shape and you won't freeze because you always know what you need to do, right? Because what you always need to do first is validate the person's feelings. And this goes even when they're not upset. If they're excited about something, you shouldn't freeze and go, what are we excited about? So you just get excited and say, if your partner, if you walk through the door and your wife or your husband is jumping up and down and oh my God, your job is to go with them and jump up and down and say, oh my God. And then ask after, what are we jumping up and down about? Validate, mirror the emotions, and then get clarity, see what the next steps are. And that's how you prevent yourself from freezing, shutting down, or defending. First thing is just echo the emotions, validate that whatever they're feeling, they have a right to feel, and that's that.